Hello everyone. My name is Janne and I'm from the Huutonet team, and here is...
Thanks. So I worked as a cloud architect on the Huuto.net AWS migration project.
Yeah. So we are here to present our little project. Quickly, I think we can manage this in let's say 15 minutes or so.
Yeah. So that leaves about 5 minutes for questions also. So I can start. So Huuto.net as a website, it's amongst the top 20 in Finland. So it's quite busy, and obviously since it's a fairly busy site, the probability of stuff hitting the fan in case something went wrong is non-zero. So quite a challenge to begin with. We started the project in May and finished in October, so it took some 5 months. Not exactly a short project, but I think it was worth every month of it. Of course, there were summer holidays in between, but still 5 months or so. Basically, throughout the project, there were 3 developers working on it. Not everyone full-time, but still roughly 1.5 to 3 developers working on it.
Yeah, we had basically team divided in 2, and the other team was continuing development as normally, and the other part was doing this ABS migration stuff.
Yeah, and to my experience, we managed to separate the responsibilities quite well and managed to run both streams concurrently. So it worked out really well. A few words about the automation that we produced during the project. So here you can see a few figures, lines of code. So we generated roughly 8,000 lines of code just for the automation that was needed for running the stuff in AWS. So quite a bit in itself already. And of course, numerous shell scripts and configuration files, etc., that were needed to get the...
Probably thousands lines of those too.
Yeah. And then the migration itself, it was, I'd say, a good success in the end. So we managed to migrate the site nearly with 0 downtime. The only thing that were really lost were active sessions. We didn't even try to sync memcached when we did the project. So.
Yeah, and it was done just during the middle of the day, and it went pretty smoothly.
Yeah. There were a few issues, but we can return to those. Yeah, so here's...
Yeah, and here's actually the point where we started this thing. So this image represents this Huuto's state before the transfer. So we had those machines on the top. They are web servers, and then we had a couple of proxies there, and those 2 servers are for the mobile side, which run Node.js side. Of course, there are load balancers on top of those, and then we had a cluster of MySQL servers, 5 of those, 5 or 6 or so, and then for the searches also a Solar cluster. So roughly about, and of course memcached servers there, roughly about 20 servers in total, and if you start counting also the test environments and so forth, there are many more servers, of course, in total. But so this was the starting point, and from here we started to design the transfer to AWS.
Yeah. So the old environment, of course, it was hosted statically, so to speak. So the servers were very static, and also DNS was handled mostly to etc hosts or /etc/hosts file. So it was fairly static, and then we took this and transformed it into a slightly less static environment in AWS.
They were basically normal virtual servers hosted here in Finland.
Yeah. So the key changes,
I think we had Red Hat Enterprise Linuxes on the servers, and after that we changed it to Ubuntu in the AWS environment. We had MariaDB 5.5 already installed. Actually, we managed to upgrade our database environment. Before that, last winter we already migrated from 5.0 to 5.1, and also we took the time to migrate the engines to InnoDB, and that was of course good thing for this AVS thing, because Aurora actually doesn't even support these MySAM engines anymore. And well, Jukka, you can continue also if you want.
So in the previous slide you saw that there was Nginx used. In the new environment we dropped the Nginx role entirely from the stack and replaced it with CloudFront and ELBs. So caching and SSL offloading is now done entirely by CloudFront and ELBs. So that's a key change, because it took away the need for more CPU processing power on the actual application servers. Of course, during the project we introduced a lot of code for the automation. We call it infrastructure as code, because I mean it's a representation of the new stack in AWS. So JSON files, templates, etc. that describe the entire AWS stack there. And also we introduced auto scaling for some parts, namely web servers and Solar slaves were made to take advantage of auto scaling as well, which will then of course lead to cost savings over time. One important thing is that during the project, Huuta.net's code base and also parts of the configuration underwent quite a bit of change as well. So cron jobs were cleaned, and what else?
Yeah, but then again, it took us about for 1.5 weeks or 2 weeks or so that when we first run the service on top of AVS. But of course, from that we had to do many things more to make it really work there, especially on the background services and stuff like that.
Yeah. So the whole project was iterating. We were iterating quite fast and get started, which just created a simple replica of the current environment they had, and then just started our work from there, and it worked really well in my opinion. So
yeah.
Gradually we were refining the whole thing and made it production ready. And like I said, DNS was very much handled by /etc/host file on the previous static environment, and in the new environment we had to take advantage of DNS, because that's how it essentially works in AWS. So without DNS you're again tied to IP addresses, which will lead to more static configurations. So we had to take advantage of DNS, and that also brought along some troubles, but we managed to solve those.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then just briefly explaining about the project. So some good bits about it, from my perspective at least. So during the project I think we achieved good communication within the project team and also with other stakeholders.
And with managers.
Yeah, them too. So
that's not always so easy.
Yeah. But in any case, I think we were able to do stuff right, and the schedule wasn't overwhelming for us. Mostly thanks to the managers who allowed us to do it. So thank you, Mikko, and thank you, Juha, as well. So we had the chance to actually do good work. And then my thanks go to Janne and Rauno, who, as developers, they weren't afraid to change the application itself. So in many cases, if you just transform an application and move it over, it might not work as well as you want it to work. So some changes were necessary there as well, and they were able to do those changes. Automation responsibility, basically referring to the fact that I personally created some of or most of the automation, so the CloudFormation stacks, the chef code to initialize server roles, But then Rauno and Janne took that and built their own automation on top of that, and I think we managed to make it quite a good split there in terms of responsibility, and I believe that over time it will work even better. So.
Yeah, and of course we weren't that familiar with AWS environment when we started, but along the way we of course learned it a bit, and first started using the the console side, and then Rauno made many of those things scripted, bash scripts and etc., which helped us to automatize the server creation and stack creation and stuff like that.
Yeah, so there was kind of a natural layer of abstraction on top of the AWS stuff, upon which Rauno and Janne built their own scripts again. So that was quite fluent for us, at least. And that we already covered. That a lot of obsolete stuff was cleaned up during the project.
And lots of obsolete DNS names and like 50 lines or so.
Yeah, yeah. So we also, in terms of performance, the code became better. So especially related to DNS, there was some code that just didn't work when we actually used DNS servers over etc hosts. Yeah, at least slightly more highly available now. So some of the components we managed to make more highly available, but we have actually a backlog of issues to actually take this further and make it even more highly available.
Yeah, and probably utilize more those AWS services in the future.
One prime example being NFS, which is currently just done by a single instance. That will be at some point replaced by AWS, EFS, or Elastic File System. Okay, any questions at this point?
So then the bad bits.
The bad bits, yeah, or the not so good bits. So yes, the schedule was slightly extended during the project, so we didn't hit the initial goal of going live in September, so we had to postpone a few times, mostly due to late discovery of certain issues, which was again caused by just not being able to start proper or final functional and performance tests early enough.
Yeah, and then we had those direct connection, direct connect stuff. It took a week or two.
Yeah. Basically, we just took the initiative to fix certain things too late. We could have started a bit earlier, but yeah, that's hindsight. And then one concrete issue that we faced during the go live itself. So it's actually an important fact to know when you decide to move your own stuff into AWS. So if you use email sending or SMTP, beware that PC2 by default throttles SMTP traffic on AWS accounts. So if you send email from instances, there's a network level throttling in place, and like Huuto.net, it sends a lot of email. So you can hit that, and we hit it when we were going live, and then that was.
And Huuto wasn't, at the time we were not sending email through the AWS system. We had our separate mail servers here in Finland.
Yeah.
But that was a problem we didn't realize at first, and we didn't find out the cause.
Yeah.
Too quick, I would say.
Yeah. But luckily, with the help of AWS support, we were able to solve that issue quite quickly still. Then, like we said, we used, or we do still use AWS Aurora for the database. It was launched only a few months before we went live, so naturally had its own hiccups there. Quite a few bugs were found by us, and of course only in production, so test workloads never revealed those issues. And
yeah, like random restarts.
Yeah. Yeah, so we had Aurora replicas restarting randomly, and that was fixed like a week ago now.
Yeah.
So not that nice, but.
But I think the AWS support they responded really well, and.
Yeah, in that case they did.
They patched the servers, and then we would, restart them on our own time and see what happens, and they put some logging in there and try to really solve what was going on the servers.
Yeah. So they actually released a dedicated patch just for us. At least that's how we feel. Of course, it might have might have deployed it to someone else too, but
might
still,
have.
Yeah. Direct Connect, that's used for Sanoma to from AWS connections. Again, I said it took some time, but there we could have taken the initiative to start building up the connection earlier, and that would have avoided the problems. And now, even though in the Aurora case AWS support worked fairly well, there were cases where it didn't work so well. So my advice is that if you use AWS support, use the case severities wisely. So if something is really urgent, make it urgent. If something's not urgent, don't make it urgent. So it's kind of find a balance there. Okay. So yeah, then some concluding remarks, just as general advice to you guys if you choose to go to AWS.
Yeah, so we would really so that automatization here is of course important. So automate stuff as far as possible, so we can make these repeatable environments, and we can now deploy, of course, quality QA environments and testing environments very rapidly and test things. So that's important now. And communication is essential. Avoid emailing, meet people, discuss, call them, and you will get things done much faster. And of course run system and performance tests and profile code. Jukka did this code profiling for us also, and that went pretty well. And for example, the memcache thing we fixed.
Yeah. So initially we were starting the performance tests. The performance was absolutely horrible. So we had huge variance in latency, very large latencies, and we were just overwhelmed at what is this? And the only way to actually find out what was the problem was to profile the code using New Relic, and for us that worked really well.
Yeah.
Pinpoint the points in the code that actually were repeating, and also where the biggest latencies were.
Yeah, and then we made fixes and tested again and saw that it works, and then moved ahead. And of course for the migration itself, we planned that quite a bit, made exhaustive checklists, and that was very much the key to the actual migration, that it went so well. And of course, like it always happens, that even when you are doing these checklists, when you go live, you will see new problems, and because you will be having this also the live users there, and then it's very important to monitor the system and see what comes up, and then react if needed. And now for the last part, of course, the optimization is still, there is much of that to be done, and we have our backlog full of things, hopefully good things that we will still manage to do. I think hopefully at least maybe next year.
Yeah. So I guess an important thing is to get a good balance of what you do before go live and then what after the go live. Some things don't need to be done before go live, and then you can continue optimizing afterwards. That also affects the schedule, of course, so you can get stuff done or live much faster if you don't try and do everything and just don't stop refining. So yeah.
Do we have any more slides
well, we
left?
have one more slide, but that's basically just enumerating all the services that we use in Uta.net. So if that sparks any questions, then I'm happy. But yeah.
What does all those letters mean? You asked about integration processes?
Yeah, and especially how you deploy your code.
Yeah, of course, we had to make changes to the deployment somewhat. So, but currently, I mean, in the big picture, if you compare that to the previous version, we still have those, you know, management servers there, and from which we deploy. And but of course, the environment itself, we have now few people only who really know, who was part of on the process, but the other guys in the team, they still need to be catched to the AVS side, and so that they also can handle the server administration tasks and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think basically we retained all the old options, but introduced some new deployment options. I need to put it in a nutshell.
Yeah, so we still make releases every 2 weeks about, and still we have the hotfix capabilities, but of course this auto scaling has introduced us some new problems that we now have to take care of, so that when new instances pop up, they also need to have the latest releases and the latest hotfixes applied to them. And so, but we're working on that. Any more questions?
The actual throughput of the system, when do you send machines in? In terms of HTTP requests,
I think currently we're hitting 300 requests per second roughly, but that's behind CloudFront. So
yeah. But I think the setup we introduced in the beginning, it's I think most of the systems here are pretty similar in the setup.
I think CloudFront currently serves some 60 million requests.
Yeah, but actually after we have migrated to AVS, of course the instance, there are not so many anymore, and we have actually I think we have the capacity to scale down a bit now. Yeah. So there will be less than 20 instances.
To wait until after Christmas when people start selling their...
Yeah, well, we got the auto scaling working now, so bring it on.
Applause for Juha and Jukka. Sorry, Jana, was it right?
Yes,
that's Jana and Jukka. So for our next speaker,